What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Culture 316 podcast. I am one of your hosts and producers, Jordan Nahisi.
Joined by your co-host, Mo. What is up, people?
Thank you guys so much for tuning into another episode of the show. So we have a couple of quick little announcements. Number one, my sis has been picking up a lot of momentum with the MWO merch. If you're not in the Discord, you don't know. You're not in the loop, and you need to join the Discord right away. Both the Culture 316 and Mo's Discord. I believe our Discord is in the description, but merch is coming soon. So be on the lookout for that. Also, if you are on Apple Podcasts or Spotify Podcasts, be sure to subscribe, give the show a 5 stars. If you are watching via YouTube, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe as well. Without any further ado, we're not going to waste any more time. We're going to get right into the show. So the first things first, this past Sunday was AEW Revolution 2024. A lot happened, including the official send-off for the Icon Sting. So I wanted to know some of your takeaways from this pay-per-view, and what did you think?
Okay, so I did not watch in real time like you guys. I was a delinquent and decided to wake up today and watch it. And I'm thinking, oh, I could last, I queued it up. So it was about 4 hours long. I'm like, I could do 4 hours. For some reason, and I know WWE pay-per-views are like 3 to 4 hours now. It felt like it was way longer. And I was trying to give it a fair chance because I saw excellent reviews from people that do actually watch AEW steadily. And maybe my palate just changed over time. But I thought the pacing felt like it dragged. I thought some matches didn't belong in there. Like you could have saved it for like a Dynamite, like the whole Meaty Men thing going on. That was just... Was it entertaining a little bit? I guess. Was it pay-per-view worthy? No. I want to say, honestly, I didn't start getting actually kind of invested till pretty much when I saw Deanna versus Toni Storm. That's when I got really excited. But by then, my energy was kind of sucked out of me. So I'm watching the match. And I actually made it up to watching Takeshita versus Will Ospreay. Those were both really good matches from what I've seen. But unfortunately, like I said, just the pacing of the matches beforehand and then how many there were, it took away my energy for the matches I really wanted to see. I definitely wanted to see, obviously, Will versus Takeshita. Yes, I want to see Toni versus Deanna, but I wanted to see Swerve's match, and I missed that. I want to obviously see Sting's retirement, and I missed that. So I can't comment thoroughly about what I missed. Jordan will obviously pick up from that point. But what I can address is what was the biggest takeaway from everyone, whether you watched or you didn't watch it. Darby seemed to have stole the show with this spot that he did.
Yeah.
And again, I didn't even watch at this point, but I saw just that little clip of this little 130-pound man. I don't know how much he weighs. Little 130-pound man with no muscle mass on him at all whatsoever, jumping off a ladder and landing into some real glass. And there was no body. I had to watch this several times. I'm like, was there a body there? Like, was he trying to do something cool? There was no body there. He just for shits and giggles, nigga just flung his body, risking infection and paralysis, and landed on glass. Shards was flying all over the audience. They either were like this, they were wiping it off of them. I was like, well, that's a lawsuit. But that caused a whole debacle on the internet. That's all I commented on from the pay-per-view. And y'all was mad at me. One of you guys not. But y'all was mad at me because I was asking what was the point. I understand that growing up, yeah, we had ECW, and yes, they did do a lot of crazy things back then. But I feel like that was cool because we were kids, and at that time, it just fit the time. I don't see any kids going around hyped about that type of stuff. Like, I feel like the whole climate of wrestling kind of matured to where we don't need that type of stuff. Like I said, Darby Allin, he's actually a good wrestler. But, over time with his time in AEW, it seemed like he kind of just wants to be a stuntman. And the problem about being a stuntman is that it's all fun and games until something goes wrong. And the thing about also being a stuntman is that you have to keep topping and topping and topping and topping yourself.
Yes.
You have to. And that again opens up the probability that you could injure yourself. And it's like at this point, are you a stuntman or are you a wrestler? That's where my criticism came from. 'Cause I was just like, yo, I understand that it is in line with his gimmick that he doesn't care if he dies and that he's on the edge and whatever. But it's just like, yo, it's not necessary. We kind of want you around a little bit longer. Can you do something else that is satisfying? It does not require you having shards of glass. Like, I'd be so mad if I was your physician having to take that out. Like, what did you do now? What did you do now and why? Because this was all unnecessary. But y'all ate me up. Not all you guys, but the AEW people that will defend this company till they're blue in the face
To the end.
was trying to like say I'm too soft. I'm just like, well, what if he died? Let's just put that out there. What if he did die? Then what? Would I been too soft then? Like, this is not something that, like, again, it's even in the description of his job to do. He's just doing it because someone gave him the clear to do it. You know, I know that Sting liked it. He got a kick out of it. You know, he was commending Darby on doing like all this crazy stuff. And, you know, maybe Darby just did want to have him go out in a bang. You know, he wanted to make this feel like it's a Sting celebration. Let's like make this match super memorable. The problem that I also am thinking is that, yo, you did all this and not for nothing. Most of the world still don't know your name. Can you imagine almost dying? Can you imagine if he got injured and nobody still knows your name? Like, what did you do that for, baby? What did you do? What were we doing here? But no one wants to talk about that. Y'all just, you know, you guys want to defend this company to the ground, and I'm fine with you being AEW fans. But like, let's use logic here. Let's use logic. You really like this wrestler? You actually give a fuck about them? You would want them to do things within the means that they would be safe. I don't care how many times they practiced that stunt. It was stupid. It was stupid. It was irresponsible. Tony should not have cleared that. I don't care that it went well. We don't need that. AEW doesn't need that. Okay? Stipulations are really not that needed in wrestling in 2024. That's all I got to say about the Darby thing and the pay-per-view. But I'm going to pass off to Jordan. What were your takeaways?
So for starters, I'm sorry, I'm just chewing on my AO. But for starters, I feel like Revolution was a really good show. Super long, but I think we've kind of come to expect this of AEW shows. If you watch All In, any of their other pay-per-views or premium live events, this particular show had 10 matches, including the kickoff matches, which is kind of in a sharp contrast to WWE's premium live events, which are usually like, well, at least this last one was like, I think 4 or 5 matches with Elimination Chamber and even the Royal Rumble. So obviously the show went a little bit longer. Nevertheless, I think that's kind of a part of AEW's brand. So I'm not necessarily complaining about that. Will Ospreay versus Konosuke Takeshita stole the show, in my opinion. That was easily the best match of the night. It was a great showcase for the both of them. Nobody really came out looking weak. And it kind of solidified Will Ospreay as a main event player if he wasn't already solidified. So I think that there was that. Obviously, the biggest kind of event of the night. Well, actually, before I get to the Sting match, I also noticed that it seems like AEW is starting to lean more and more in to the Undisputed Kingdom, right? We have Wardlow winning that. It was formerly known as Meat Madness. It was then rebranded as the 8-man All-Star Scramble, the winner of which who was going to be the number one contender for the AEW World Heavyweight title. So Wardlow won that. Then obviously Roderick Strong beat Orange Cassidy to win the Intercontinental, wow, the international title. And I think it's just kind of a symbol that they're really, really leaning into the Undisputed Kingdom. And I think that they have big plans for Wardlow. Moving into the triple threat, there's so many matches that happen that you forget that the world title was defended. The triple threat match between Samoa Joe, Swerve, and Hangman. We saw, it's interesting because that's the first time I ever watched a triple threat match where the champion retained and there was still a double turn in the match. Hangman became a heel, Swerve became a face. And it positioned Swerve to kind of be able to play off the crowd a little bit more, as we saw in the latest episode of Dynamite. So yeah, we saw that, and I think that was very, very interesting. Tony versus Deanna was great. I love the way that it ended. I feel like this positioned Deanna versus Mariah May. Also, I think Whitney put this in the chat that the Mariah May Tony Storm story is kind of like all about Eve, where like the girl is attaching herself to the main girl and she's acting delusional, but in reality, she knows exactly what she's doing. And I could actually see that happening. So there's that aspect. So going on from that, Sting, the retirement match for the AEW tag team titles. So before I get into the Darby spot, I do have to commend AEW. This is how you treat a legend. This is how you book a legend. From the time that Sting got into AEW until the time he retired, clean record, no losses, never submitted, never pinned, and then he went out like an absolute G. He retained his titles, and Sting, apparently the Young Bucks were, Sting was open to having the Young Bucks win it, but the Young Bucks insisted, and that shows that they're willing to do good business, right? And honor a legend like Sting. Be like, listen, y'all can win the titles. We'll deal with that afterwards. But I think that the retirement, the fact that the fact that Sting had this type of career in AEW, it was kind of like his redemption tour. It was he had the perfect AEW career. He had the perfect AEW send-off. His entrance with that vintage WCW 97 music, having one of his sons come out as Sting in the Wolfpack, having the other one come out as like white meat babyface Sting, and then Sting coming up as himself. Like, that was so fire. And then having his sons involved with the match was fantastic. Even the glass spot that Sting did wasn't bad because he was wearing a shirt. You know what I mean? He was wearing a shirt. He had padding underneath. So even though he went through that glass, structure, he was well protected. You know what I mean? So it was smart for Sting to do that. Now on to the Darby Allin spot. Oh my God. I can't even begin to put in words how foolish it was, because like Mo said, you risk paralysis, you risk infection, you also risk the safety and the livelihood of the fans that are nearby. And so doing something along those lines, and I don't even think that it really advanced the story of the match like that. If anything, it was just more overkill, right? Like, you brought in Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. He got super kicked. Ric Flair got super kicked. Darby went through that glass thing. It's just like this. It was, that aspect of it was just too much. And it puts him at danger. It puts the wrestlers around him at danger. I found it to be foolish. I didn't think it needed to be there. But outside of that, the ironic part of this, it was the dumbest thing. It became the most memorable moment of the match, and it almost overshadowed the fact that this was Sting's retirement match. And it almost overshadowed the fact that this was literally the perfect way for Sting to go out. But nevertheless, I think that they did a great job. I think that they did a great job with sending Sting off the way that he deserved to be sent off. Like, if you tell me that match was Sting's final match, I don't think it could have gone any better from his end. So that was my whole thing of them. But, that was my takes for Revolution. But I want to hear everyone else's takes at home. If you have any thoughts or opinions on AEW Revolution, and we're going to be talking about AEW a lot during the show, so buckle up. But if you have any thoughts,
down below, and let us Discord.
Yeah, and in the Discord, we're going to continue these discussions. But anyway, let's move along, because during AEW Revolution, they announced AEW Dynasty, which is going to be their next pay-per-view, which is going to be on April 21st, coming live from St. Louis. It has been announced that AEW will be doing 9 pay-per-views this year, which is obviously a very, very stark contrast from their previous amount of pay-per-views. I'm actually going to round off all these pay-per-view names So first, obviously, we had AEW Revolution on March 3rd. We have AEW Dynasty on April 21st. We have AEW Double or Nothing, probably going to be around May. AEW for in New Japan Pro Wrestling Forbidden Door, which is probably going to be June. We have All In London, All Out in Chicago, AEW Wrestle Dream, AEW Full Gear, and AEW World's End. So we're going from 4 big shows a year, or even 6 big shows a year, to 9 big shows a year. Is this good? Is this bad? I need to know.
I like the idea of more pay-per-views, just because, I mean, A, it helps the fans so they don't have to travel every single time, they want to go see a wrestling show, because there are some diehard AEW people that travel really across the United States just to watch a pay-per-view. A, but B, I just previously complained that I thought it was far too many matches on one pay-per-view, and I know why they did so many matches. I mean, if you only have 4, you have quarterly pay-per-views. Well, yeah, you're going to stack on everything. And I
Right.
feel like this is a good time to experiment, maybe like alternating which things go, maybe which things will piece together well to like keep the energy levels up as people attend the show. Because it's kind of like mirroring, I guess, what WWE did. They think they tested out less pay-per-views and more pay-per-views, and then having certain brands be on pay-per-views, and it will alternate. They tested out a lot of things.
Yeah. Agreed.
So I feel like AEW will have a chance to test out, will work better if we just do Dynamite here, Collision here on the next pay-per-view, maybe like cherry pick here and there. I think that's cool. Obviously that's a plus for them business wise if they could even acquire more pay-per-views and acquire more areas that are willing to let them wrestle in their arenas. So yeah, pretty awesome. I want to see what they do differently. What do you think?
So I think it's also a good thing for the same reasons that you just mentioned. I feel like because there aren't as many shows, they tend to pack everything onto everything. And so the shows become super long. And so I feel like if you have more shows, you can kind of space out certain matches. I also feel like there's less gaps in stories. I feel like that's a very sometimes I mean I don't even want to say that there's gaps in stories. I just feel like there's certain matches that they put on TV that deserve to be on a pay-per-view. Like, for example, they have an I Quit match between Christian Cage and Adam Copeland for the TNT title. In my opinion, that should be at a pay-per-view. But I get it. It's going to be in Toronto. But I feel like there's certain things that they do on regular TV that are just pay-per-view worthy. Like certain matches is just like you have to make people pay for that. That's such a good match. And so I feel like with these 9 shows, they're able to space everything out, and you won't have as many long shows, and you'll also have payoffs to stories in a much quicker way. So I think this is
I
actually a
agree.
really good thing, and I think it's a really good idea. And, anything that can result in a bigger payday for the wrestler is always a good idea. If these guys are getting pay-per-view bonuses, if these guys are getting more money, I'm all for it. So have, 9 shows this year, AEW. Let us know in the comments below if you think that it is a good idea or if it's a bad idea, or we can talk about it in the Discord. But we are going to be moving on. So while we're on the topic of AEW, because we're going to be talking about Santana in a minute, but I had to talk about this. So we had been talking last week about AEW doing a new rebranding, right? And it seemed like over the past 3 to 4 years, they've done, quite a good amount of shifting when it comes to their visual identity. And we finally were able to see their new set this past Wednesday. I personally think it's fire. And it got me to kind of change my position a little bit from last week. But I want to know, how did you feel about the new AEW Dynamite set?
I have it open up in front of me just so I could commentate, but I like it because it held on to their older roots with the double tunnels,
Yeah.
the heels coming out one side, faces coming out the other side. I kind of like that. But it doesn't look as indie-ish. They definitely up the production. I like the fact that you got lights going around the rim. You got the LED lights going on the ground. You got the screen on the back. The screen on the back does kind of remind me a little bit of WWE. Yeah, but I just like how in general it just looks like a production facelift. Because whether you like to admit it or not, presentation is everything. And I do think to some degree their presentation did kind of make them look a little bit indie-ish. But I think that's what they wanted at the beginning, just so they kind of came off more appealing to indie mark wrestling fans that were watching them, but now it's like, all right, like now we're no longer there. We're kind of like moving up the ranks. We got to present ourselves as such, and that's what I think this gives me. I also noticed that it's white inside of the ring now. And I prefer that. I prefer that because you can see everything a lot clearer. It kind of just places all the focus on the center of the ring instead of everything, because it's not
Yeah.
like one big mushy color going across as one gradient. Like I actually feel like I could focus more on what's going on in the ring and with the two people with the white. It just looks nice. It looks clean. It looks cut. It definitely, I think, added more value to the show, and I feel like it was the right thing to do, knowing that you had a big major star showing up. Like,
Yeah.
what a better way than to make sure he has a brand new set that accommodates his entrance. So now I want to know what it's going to look like when Mercedes comes out with her entrance with this whole facelift.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but what do you think?
I was just about to say, when you said one new star, I was like, well, I think it's two new stars beginning next week. But as of now, one new star, and we'll talk about him later in the show. I think it's great. I think it's nice. It's polished. It's vibrant and it's bright, but it still looks serious. It doesn't look too kiddish. I think that was like the issue with like NXT 2.0, right?
Yes.
It was very like vibrant and it felt very like,
Like a unicorn threw up on you.
yes, exactly. This feels very vibrant and very bright, but it also still feels serious. I love that the fact that they brought the tunnels back, because to be honest, I think that the tunnels are part of what made them them. Like obviously that was something that was done in TNA. Shout outs to them. That was done in TNA first, but I think that once AEW brought it back, they associated the tunnels with AEW. And I think that part of improving isn't just about forsaking what made you you. It's just about modifying it and bringing it into a new era while making it look fresh and making it look clean. The tunnels are back and they look cleaner than they did the first time around. So I'm really, really happy about that. I'm glad they also, little detail. So on this, not this set, but the previous set, one of my favorite things was the ramp, because it reflected the stage. It was like this black kind of surface where it kind of served as a mirror to the stage. And I think that it looked really, really cool. So I'm glad that they kept that black ramp. And so, yeah, I just think that they did a really good job with the set. I think this is a great way to kind of usher in the new era, because obviously over the past 6 months, they've been able to gather quite a few valuable free agents. One that we will be discussing later in the show, one that is rumored to be debuting next week, as well as one in Deonna Purrazzo, who has already kind of came in and did her thing. So I think that this is kind of a great step forward. And it feels like them. It doesn't feel childish. I think they get an A+ on this. But we want to know how you guys feel about this new AEW Dynamite set. Let us know in the comments below, or head on over to the Discord and we can talk about it. But we're going to be moving on. So unfortunately, it looks like a previously admired talent was released from AEW, and his name is Santana. It looks like Santana has been removed from the AEW roster online, and rumors have been swirling that he has been released. How do you feel about this move by AEW releasing Santana?
It's definitely an eyebrow raiser, just because I want to say it was around the fall when he tried to have his own singles heel debut.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, people weren't completely with it. They thought it was kind of cruel to Ortiz to break up the faction. But we do also know, because Santana's a little bit more private,
Mm-hmm.
that he was going through like the loss of like his father and stuff like that. But I don't want to have too much of an opinion because I don't know what's going on with him. But what I did notice is that Ortiz did post a picture of them together.
Mm.
So last time I checked, they weren't on good terms. And
Yeah.
one wanted to go the other way independently. The other person was totally cool with being in a tag team with each other. So it sounds like the bros are back on good terms, and I care about that more than anything.
Yeah.
I'm going to safely assume that if he got released, I can't possibly think that it would be because of like bad character, or they didn't think he had anything to offer. Um, Maybe he just needed time to himself, or maybe he just wants to move elsewhere. Maybe he wanted to be independent again. or maybe he's going through a transition in life where he maybe just wants to step away from wrestling. I don't know what conversation was had. All I could hope for is that he's okay,
Right.
because I have no context to go off of. And it's not like I really got to see too much of his work in AEW, unfortunately. We got to see him as a tag team. Then they unfortunately did not get to climax to really much of anything outside of being part of Jericho's circle.
Yeah.
So, I mean, whatever he gave to AEW, I'm pretty sure Tony Khan is appreciative of it. I'm pretty sure he's appreciative of the opportunity. But whatever Santana is doing, I just hope he's good.
Mm.
What do you think?
I think it's just unfortunate. One of the things that I was heavily looking forward to when AEW, came into when AEW Dynamite had its first episode, because that's where they debuted. Actually, no, they debuted at Double or Nothing.
They did.
But I was excited to see LAX, which then became rebranded as Proud and Powerful, climb up the tag team ladder. Did I think that both of them were capable and competent of being singles wrestlers? Absolutely. But I felt like there was a real void in AEW for a tag team that can be a main event tag team outside of the Young Bucks right away.
Mm-hmm.
And I watched their work in Impact Wrestling, especially towards the end when it was like the OGs versus the new generation of LAX, and they were doing some fantastic work. So obviously, them breaking up broke my heart. And then also, Santana is someone who I think has a lot of potential to be a star. But it's never fun to hear about anyone losing their job. And so I wish him nothing but the best. I hope that, I think he's been working House of Glory. I hope he works up the ranks there, and, hopefully somewhere down the line he finds his way back to AEW or maybe WWE. But man, it just sucks, because when I saw Proud and Powerful for the first time in AEW, I'm like, these guys are tag champs. These guys are main eventers. And unfortunately, they were just, a part of the inner circle. And I feel like they could have been so much more. So there's that. But let us know how you feel about Santana being released from AEW. However, we're going to be moving on, because, man, WWE has announced their first set of inductees into the WWE Hall of Fame for this year's class. Bull Nakano, I believe, is one of those people. I don't know that much about her, admittedly, but she is big amongst real, true pro wrestling fans, which I think is awesome to see, that somebody of her stature and of her nature, even though she has amassed a big resume outside of WWE, can still have her achievements recognized by WWE. But I think the biggest story is that in Philadelphia, Paul Heyman is being inducted into this year's class of the WWE Hall of Fame. We've talked about this on the show before, that he should be inducted in Philly. So I want to know your thoughts about Paul Heyman being inducted. And I also want to know who should induct Paul Heyman in Philly.
Yeah, the second question is going to be really hard to answer, because who has the right to? Who has the right to? And also the person that like everyone associates him with now, he's like banned from the company just about.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like now it does raise a question: who would induct Paul Heyman? That's a good question. But as far as he goes, I'm excited. I'm scared, because I'm like, wait, does him being inducted mean that Paul's gonna wrap it up soon? Because like, I'm so used to having Paul, and I'm so privileged to have Paul. I didn't really think of the idea that maybe there's gonna be a point in wrestling where he's not gonna be around, because he was like a staple for like the last 10 plus years.
Mm-hmm.
With the way that he's managed Brock Lesnar, the way that he's managed, I think Punk at some point, the way he's been managing Roman, like he has been such a major staple in elevating whatever stars he aligns with. I mean, obviously he did his thing in ECW. Like he is like in his own way, a generational talent.
Yeah.
And I love everything about Paul. I love his brain. I love his promos. I love his ideas that he has for stars. I just really appreciate him. And yes, he most definitely does deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. Shoot, I really hope that does not mean he's being sent off, because that'd be a crazy way to end the Bloodline storyline, to have like a Paul Heyman send off, because I'm not gonna be okay. Like, sir, you were meant to stay here with me. What do you mean that you're going? Like, where are you going? Like, you do realize we're all your grandchildren.
Yeah.
Like, I feel some type of way. Now, as far as who should, God, that's so hard. Because, like, who literally has the right? I mean, Punk's not even a Hall of Famer. You can't induct someone unless, right, you're a Hall of Famer yourself. That's how it works.
Not necessarily, because I believe Stone Cold Steve Austin was inducted by The Rock, who technically is not a WWE Hall of Famer.
Sorry, someone just came down.
You're fine.
But that'd be really weird to have Punk, but at the same time, you need someone that's very good with their words to induct Paul. Like, he is amazing and talented at putting anyone over, and giving them the proper setup. So I just feel like it's someone that is also an excellent mouthpiece, that has worked closely and directly with Paul.
I have one, but I want you to go ahead.
Because I'm thinking hard, and like who is worthy is my question for Paul, because I don't want no half-ass like speech for him, and I can't think of one right now. Do you actually? I want to hear yours.
So I'm going to start off with my little spiel about Paul Heyman, and then I'm going to go into my answer.
Yeah.
Paul Heyman is the greatest manager of all time. He is the greatest I wouldn't even say that. He is easily, in my opinion, next to Vince McMahon, the greatest creative mind in the history of pro wrestling.
Oh, yeah.
This man has had 6 Hall of Fame careers. We can take what he did in WCW with who we now know as The Undertaker. We can talk about what he did with being with ECW. We can talk about him being a commentator. We can talk about him bringing in Brock Lesnar. We can talk about him in Punk. We can talk about him in Brock again. We can talk about him in Roman. And that's not even including the stuff that he did in OVW, which set up the likes of a CM Punk, which set up the likes of a lot of the stars that we know and that we love today. He's the greatest manager of all time. He's one of the greatest creative minds in the history of pro wrestling. Like you said, he's a generational talent. And I believe that this is, long overdue, but I'm just glad that it's happening in Philadelphia. I feel like that crowd is going to pop crazy when he gets introduced, because Paul Heyman, as much as he's from New York, he is Philadelphia. So I'm very much looking forward to his induction, and I think that it's well deserved. I'm looking forward to the Paul Heyman Hall of Fame merch. I will be buying it. As far as who should induct Paul Heyman into the Hall of Fame, I have not only the perfect person, but someone whose inclusion in this ceremony will deepen the tensions between him and the bloodline. Stone Cold Steve Austin. When Stone Cold Steve Austin was fired from WCW in 1995, Paul Heyman called Stone Cold and said, "Come to ECW, work for me, cut some promos." He went there and created the Stone Cold character, and then ended up going to WWE from there. Now, we all know the history that Stone Cold has with The Rock. We all know that The Rock is currently involved in the Bloodline storyline. So how would Roman Reigns feel if the rival of his cousin was inducting Paul Heyman? It would deepen the tensions just a little bit. Also, something to consider, I don't think that this is Paul Heyman's last go around, because one person who he has been teasing, managing for a good amount of time is Braun Breaker. Braun Breaker, I don't think that Brock being etched out of Paul Heyman's story is the biggest deal in the world because, as you know, Paul Heyman has never been someone to live in the past. He's always someone who's looking at what's the future of the product and what's the present of the product. He has the present of the product, which is Roman Reigns. But we're talking about the future of the product. It's Braun Breaker. I can't find anyone else that is the more perfect client and the follow-up to Roman Reigns than Braun Breaker.
Yeah,
I believe that I feel like he's going to manage Braun Breaker. And I feel like that's after that, God knows what happens. But I think Braun is going to be his next client. But to wrap it all up, Paul Heyman, I'm just so happy that he's being inducted. It's well-deserved. If it's not Stone Cold Steve Austin, I think that ECW is a collective. So the Dudleys, Tommy Dreamer, Rob Van Dam, and Taz should all be there to induct Paul Heyman.
I'm sure they'll be invited.
Yeah, 100% will be invited. And considering that they have a good relationship with Impact or TNA, I don't think it's going to be an issue for them to get a hold of Tommy Dreamer. So we'll see what happens with that. But let us know about how you guys feel about Paul Heyman and Bull Nakano being inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame. But we are moving on. So, so speaking of legendary managers, a legendary former NXT GM made his on-screen return to NXT this past week. That was William Regal. He did a segment with his son, Charlie Dempsey, who just won the NXT Heritage Cup, formerly known as the NXT UK Heritage Cup. I want to know how you feel about William Regal being back, coming back to NXT and being on an on-screen capacity.
All I could think of is War Games.
That's the accent. You sound like Harry Potter.
I can't do a good old white man, but maybe you can.
I can't. I cannot.
But no, like what? I get my granddad back. Like, I feel like he was, to me, a heart that he was the completion of the heart that we had at NXT. And I just felt like that was painful. Like losing Morrow was painful, but losing William Regal, it just didn't hit the same. Anytime anyone yelled at War Games, I was so mad. I was so mad. I was upset. It just took me back just because William was a staple of like the most preliminary stage of NXT.
Yeah.
That brought up the greatest stars that we see today, take it on the main roster. It was so weird with him not being there, but now that NXT is way up, like they're way up. I love the fact that they're introducing some older pieces back, and this just feels right. This made me smile. I'm happy to see my granddad back. Like, I'm so hyped.
I agree with you. I think that him being back to NXT is needed. I feel like he's just an automatic energy lifter. I think that he is great at what he does as the general manager. It was great to see him and whatever role he's back in now. If it's going back to being a general manager or just dealing with his son, I'm very, very excited. Like we saw what he did in AEW for the short time he was there, creating the Blackpool Combat Club and then briefly managing MJF. We know how valuable he is as an on-screen character and as a creative mind behind the scenes. So I think that this is going to be fantastic. I'm very, very much looking forward to what he does. I think the vibe is back in NXT. Like, I feel like, when like you have a party of people and like everybody's coming in the door and then that one person comes in and it's just like, it's official. It's a party. Yeah. William Regal is that guy. So I think that him being back on screen, and I'm very, very interested to see more interactions between him and Charlie Dempsey. So I'm very excited. But let us know how y'all feel about William Regal being back as an on-screen character for NXT. Let us know in the comments below, but we are going to move on. So going from NXT, we're going to go back to AEW. And we're going to start with the bad news. AEW has suspended Sammy Guevara for injuring Jeff Hardy after concussion protocol was not followed. Apparently, he hit the GTH. Is it GTH?
Yeah, go to hell.
Yeah, the GTH on Jeff Hardy while he was heavily concussed. So he's been suspended. How do you feel about this?
I think he's like the world rating champion for suspensions in AEW, and it's very impressive. Because he like came out swinging being suspended, and he has not let up. I mean, he had it from Mercedes. I think he had to go. I think he either got suspended or he had to take classes because his little scrap with Eddie. And now you're concussing a legend like Jeff Hardy. First of all, that's automatic hate. That's an automatic hate train coming your way, sir. And I feel like people were actually coming around to like liking Sammy again, you know, because we were proud of him being a father. You know, he kind of stayed out the way, being annoying. I think him and Tay were less insufferable. You know, it was like, okay, you know, like when you're not annoying, we could focus on you being a great wrestler, which you are. But like injuring Jeff Hardy, bro, come on now. Like, you know, he has a lot wrong up there between the drugs, between the alcohol, between all the landings he had in his life. Like, It's just so odd to me that they would go about the spot. And I'm wondering, did Jeff know this was going to happen and he didn't react in time? But even if that was the case, if someone has concussions, you shouldn't. I would avoid any type of head-related spots. Because they're not necessary. He has plenty of moves in his arsenal if he wanted to do something big. And I just feel bad for Jeff. Jeff is so cool. Jeff really don't like go out of his way to bother nobody. I hope that he's okay because as a person that firsthand suffered a concussion as well, I now understand. I now understand how terrible they could be, and Jeff's concussions are probably far worse than any level what my concussion was. So I cannot imagine landing and like you're going headfirst into someone's freaking knee while you're still recovering. Like that has to have been so scary, and I hope that he's okay. But yeah, I think a suspension is needed. I highly doubt they're going to ever fire Sammy. I feel like they have a soft spot for him, maybe because he's a pillar, or maybe because he's young and they still look at him as being a kid and stuff like that. But he really needs to tighten the fuck up because you really should have known better. I feel like everyone working there should be aware of their opponent's injuries. They should go over the can and can'ts. There's absolutely no reason under the sun that I think that this should have possibly happened. So yeah, I guess the suspension was needed. That what other punishment are you gonna do for it? To be honest, like what else would you have done?
Yeah, I don't know what I would have done.
Right.
But here's what I'm gonna say about it. Man, Sammy, I thought you was about to change your life when you became a dad. Like, I get it. Mistakes happen. Like, all that is it's a part of the game, right? But it's getting to the point where it's too much. Too many suspensions, too many mistakes, too many this, too many that. And it's like you make a new mistake every time, and it's never a better mistake than the last one you made. It's just something of equal value in a different space. So there's that. Also, man, this makes me also commend Tony Khan even more because, as you can see, he's clearly building up and or introducing new main event stars. Because if we're being honest, man, like the pillar thing isn't working. Jack Perry is in New Japan wearing a goat mask. Darby Allin is about to climb Mount Everest, and it's likely for him to return alive. I hope that he comes back alive. I love Darby Allin, but like, there's a lot of people that take that hike and they don't make it back. Darby's out here doing the most daredevilist thing that he could possibly do. Sammy Guevara is getting a new suspension every 18 months. And when it's not a new suspension, it's an injury. And then on top of that, MJF is just chilling. And we don't even know if he's coming back to AEW or not. So I have to commend Tony for just being like, you know what, we're either going to build a new main event scene or we're just going to create new top guys. No pun intended. But yeah, like this is just a lot. It's getting excessive. Bro, you've been suspended 3 times. This is a lot.
I agree.
But I'm hoping that this could be a turning point of some sort. But yeah, y'all let us know how you feel about the Sammy Guevara suspension in the comments below. But we're gonna move on because finally another piece of good AEW news Wednesday night on Dynamite in a segment between the Young Bucks and Eddie Kingston. We get the debut of the former IWGP World Heavyweight Champion, Kazuchika Okada. This is one of the men who have been in some of the greatest matches in the history of pro wrestling, including that classic trilogy with Kenny Omega. And he was introduced as the newest member of the Elite. The Young Bucks fired Kenny Omega and definitely suspended Hangman Adam Page. And now Kazuchika Okada is standing next to the Young Bucks. And it looks like Okada is coming for Eddie Kingston. So I need to know, how do you feel about this debut? How do you feel about him turning heel as soon as he gets on AEW? Tell me how you're feeling.
I was actually watching back the video while you was presenting him. He looks great, by the way.
Yeah, he does.
Because like the few times I've seen Okada, like he was always in shape relatively, but he looked softer. He looks great. He actually looks bigger. You could tell he was really preparing for this moment.
Mm-hmm.
I like the way they kind of displaced him into this feud right away. But now it makes sense as to why they they kept the belt on Eddie if they're setting him up for Okada, because I mean, Okada could just snatch up the belt immediately if he really wanted to. And then you wouldn't be wrong. I mean, it's Okada, for crying out loud. I would be mad if they did the same thing with Mercedes and they stuck her in a feud where automatically she just snatches up the belt and, she elevates the thing. I don't think anyone's going to be mad at it. But no, I like the way that they presented him. The pop obviously was crazy. This is a big opportunity for AEW to like turn things around, between the whole set, between what they got with these pay-per-views, between now acquiring your lead male star, your lead women's star. And obviously there's a lot of familiar faces for Okada to work with, so I could see them like rehashing some of the storylines that they had over in New Japan and intermaneuvering here. I like it. He came in, he felt important, he feels like a big star. I can't complain about it. Yeah, I likes it. What you think?
Man, I'm excited. I'm excited. It looks like AEW, I don't want to say AEW is back, but AEW is presenting themselves in a way that is very, very similar to how it was in 2019. They feel like that thread again between Will Ospreay, between Takeshita, between this resurgence in the Young Bucks and their new character and presentation, between Kazuchika Okada, between reportedly Mercedes Moné debuting next week. It feels like they're ramping up again, and that's just always good. And I feel like because of all these new talents and because of all the ways that the old talents are being repackaged and presented, we're going to get a much better AEW product in 2024. I'm really, really excited. Okada obviously is one of the greatest wrestlers in the world. And I feel like the way that he came in and turned heel positioned him for so much, because he can go up against Eddie Kingston for this Triple Crown Continental title. He can also go up against Kenny Omega eventually, since he is the new member of the Elite. I can see him getting into it with Hangman. I can see him getting into it with Edge. But I feel like there's so much that he can do in this space. And now we can see not just a dynamic Kazuchika Okada, but I feel like this beefens up the programming across the board. Imagine Okada versus Aleister Black or Malachi Black on Collision. I think that will go crazy. But I'm just super excited. I'm very, very happy to see Okada in AEW. He looks great. He looks at home. And I'm eager to see what he does next. But let us know how you feel about Okada being in AEW. And that concludes our show for today. Thank y'all so much for joining us once again. Once again, that MWO merch coming soon. Be sure to click the link in our description to join our Discord. And yeah, we'll see you guys next week.